All right. Welcome, everybody, to episode 4 of season 6 of GameSense. Sorry we missed you all last week, but, it'd be easier if we didn't all do robots. I'm Steve Caneb. I'm going to be hosting this week. Let's go around the table and introduce ourselves. Emerson, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Adrienne Emerson. I'm from Team 148 down in Greenville, Texas.
Let's go to Alan.
Hey, I'm Alan Gregory from Spectrum 3847 in Houston, Texas.
Let's go to Nick.
Hey, I'm Nick Lawrence. I'm from Team 3940 Cybertooth in Kokomo, Indiana.
And let's do Tom last.
Hey, I'm Tom Bottiglieri. I am from Team 254, and let's do some GameSense.
All right, well, Tom doesn't want you to know where he lives, but let's get right the heck into it. Welcome to Alan. He's somewhat of a guest on the show, so he's been on the show before, but the rest of us are technically normal parts of this. So, Alan, welcome. Have fun. All right. Let's start off the show with we don't take ourselves too seriously, so you shouldn't either. If we say something and you want to prove us wrong, you got to go out there and prove us wrong. It's more fun that way. If you want your question to be on the show, type !Q and then your question into the chat, and we will parse through those and answer the good ones on air. So make sure they're good, Ben. Okay. Let's start off this week. We've seen 4 weeks of competition. We've seen almost all of really the top level teams that we expect to see. So is there anybody in the entire world who can stop Madtown?
Me.
No. Yeah. I don't know if there's somebody who can stop them, but there's nobody better than them right now. It's not really close.
Here's a fun fact about stopping Madtown. We were looking at their record for the Sacramento Regional before the show started, and they played 9 matches, which means they had 36 possible ranking points. Of that, they got 35. The one that they didn't get was a Rocket in match 40 when they were playing against Team 973, another world-class team. So what it takes for Madtown to drop 1 ranking point is to play against another world-class team. So what is that going to mean at champs when, every single match you play is probably not against a top 5 to 10 team in the world.
And looking at that match, if they did it over again, they probably get the Rocket. They had the time in that match. It was 1 ball away. They had the time in that match to do it. Mm-hmm. It's under defense. They're still just absolutely incredible. Yeah, they did one where their hatchback broke for basically half the match. They still finished the Rocket. I have no idea how they pulled that off, but
yeah. Turns out moving sideways is potentially not a waste of time, but we'll see. Themes of the year. Themes of the year. Yeah.
It's just like 2015 when a few teams finally went to some omnidirectional drive. Now we're seeing, the off-the-shelf swerve, but we're seeing a lot more teams get more used to their own particular ones. Maybe FRC is finally graduated from only do tank drive or you're making a mistake.
I'm not sure I'm ready to go that far yet. We've still seen, right? Madtown can put in 14, 15 games. There's a lot of teams with tank who can do that too. So I'm nothing taken away from them. I'm not sure the swerve is everything that involves in making them as good as they are.
Also been working on it for a long time, right? So they're probably much better than the average FRC team at building a swerve drive and probably driving it at this point too. So
1323 has done a bunch of development on the swerve drive. I don't know if they've done as much development as some other teams have, but anecdotally, they brought their robot last year to our field to practice before champs, and I had never driven a swerve drive before in my life. Never mind a good one, right? And I was begging RC all day. I'm like, dude, let me drive it. He's like, sure, go ahead. So we did a practice match. And, my team was driving our robot and I was driving RC's robot with his operator. And I think that I put 9 cubes on the scale. Never driving it. So it's just like, oh, okay, there's a little bit of lag, but yeah, I can totally see how if they're practiced on it and using it every single day and just like, they were probably done week 4 of build. So they've been driving that thing nonstop. So I think it's going to be really hard for anybody to catch up to them. They're ridiculous.
Agreed.
Well, we've seen some really strong events from other teams this season. 971 comes to mind, 2910. Let's skip all the way. We're just going to go straight to Tom's top 5 for this week and cumulative, because that's kind of where this discussion is going. What are your top 5 robots? Tell them what the name of the URL is too.
Oh, I haven't updated the real website, but after the show, if you go to Tom's top 5, spelled out FIVE.com, every week you'll get to see what I think are the best 5 robots in the world. Now, you may be asking, Tom, do you use any kind of statistics to figure this out? Tom, are you watching all the matches? Tom, is there anything that goes into this that makes sense? And the answer for you is not really. But what it is a nice view into my head. So here's what we're gonna do. I'm just gonna go through my top 5 teams from 5 to 1 and pontificate a little bit about why I think they're there. So we're gonna start off team number 5 in the world right now, according to me, Team 971. Team 971, we played with them at the San Francisco Regional. The robot is really, really cool. It's incredibly tiny. It takes up, no space at all. The whole thing, their entire way that they pick up balls, discs, everything is based on suction. That thing holds it. It has a death grip on the ball when it has it. You can hit it with a bat and it won't fall off. So, and then they're really, really fast. They have this cool way, because they use the suction of jamming the ball into the rocket or whatever. And they're really well practiced, and it's just a really great robot. I think it's the best robot 971 has ever built, and that's saying something because they've built some really awesome robots in the past. So number 5, 971. Number 4, I had them out of my top 5 before, so this just goes to show that these can change at any time, so don't get too upset if you're not in it. Number 4, Team 2910, Jack in the Bot. After watching Madtown a bunch, I've come back on my swerve thing. And I think 2910 is probably the best driven swerve out there, even maybe a little bit better than Madtown. They just lack the ability to go high on the rocket. So you're not seeing them blowing up the scores, getting 35 out of 36 ranking points. And, and they're having a little more trouble scoring those points at the high level. But if you pair them together with a team, with another good team at Champs, they could totally go all the way. Number 3, 1678, Citrus Circuits. They've got a pretty good robot for the teleop portion. They can score the hatches and the balls pretty quickly. I don't think that they're super differentiated from a lot of the other elevator robots out there, but they've got the triple climb. It works pretty well. It works way faster than I had expected it to work. And that's going to be incredibly dangerous going into championships. You're never, ever going to be able to forget about 1678. They're always going to be there in the back of your mind for when you get to Einstein. Number 2 is their first week this week. Everyone was looking forward to seeing them. It's 2056. They basically built exactly the robot that I would expect 2056 to build. They took last year's robot, made it a foot shorter, and stuck a different gripper on it. But guess what? It's great, right? They go out there every single match. They don't do anything flashy. They're super well practiced. They go out and they just win every match. And it's a testament to how having a simple, reliable, well-practiced design can get you all the way to the top. And number 1 comes as no surprise, basically by a mile, 1323. They are so incredibly good this year for all the reasons we've already said. And, hats off really to that team. They've been really working hard over the last few years, and they've made strides. They kind of used to be one of those teams that would, build a robot that was powder coated and CNC machined, but had some awful bumpers, and
it was just salty that they stole 254's colors.
they would have an elevator on a bar, or an arm turret, or something stupid like that. But now, they're the top dogs. So hats off to 1323. They deserve it. that team works incredibly hard, and they deserve it. So that's Tom's top 5 for the week. Maybe next week it'll be different.
So if you'll notice in Tom's top 5, the only robot in it that hasn't seeded first in a competition yet is 1678. So that's his West Coast bias coming all the way through. What good is a robot if it can't even seed first? No, all right.
Yeah, well, they've played with 1323 at both events. So,
yeah,
I'm just stating facts, man. All right, now since we're on the subject of ranking, thanks to me, let's talk about we're at the stage in the season where this week, week 4, was a week where we saw 121 unicorn matches, the 4 ranking point matches, where in week 3 we'd only seen 65. So it's we're getting to sort of a tipping point. No longer can you expect to seed first at even an okay event if you never get a rocket. So what do we think? Is this a good thing, or is this going to diminish the value too much of teams that are primarily hab climbers?
I mean, I feel like that was where it was always going. So like we had a hab 3 climb. It did not work on the comp bot. It worked on the practice bot. But so we ended up not even trying to fix it for Greenville, knowing if we could do the rocket, we'd have enough partners who could have 3 and we'd still be able to rank. So we ended up ranking 4 at our last event because we did 7 out of 12 rockets and just got some hab 3 climbs, and we have some hab 2 getting the hab ranking point wherever we could. Because especially at champs, there's going to be a ton of hab 3 climbs from the early weeks when they all won, from districts where they seed high enough. Even if you don't have one, they'll be available.
And I feel like at the beginning of the season, we kind of talked about this the last time I was on the show about a couple of weeks ago, where people, most of the teams, especially that are going to districts, this is probably their second district event. They've probably practiced, they've probably made improvements. And so now you're seeing teams that maybe were only able to do 2/3 of a rocket before, who can now, pretty much go out, and unless something terrible goes wrong, they're going to be able to get that rocket RP. And I think that helps a lot with the rankings at events, because the people that can do everything pretty well are probably going to end up pretty close to the top. And usually at FRC events, when you go, that's what you want to see. Like, the number 1 robot is the best team at the event, which we all know sometimes in some ranking systems in some years past, that doesn't always happen. So I think now we're starting to see rankings at events that, really showcase the best robots right at the top. And I think that's a really good thing.
Except for 1678, of course.
Oh, yeah, of course. That's right.
Well, we are all on teams that do more than one event a season. How much of a detriment do you think it is to those teams that competed in week 1 to go straight to championships? Like, is it going to be obvious which teams only competed in the first couple of weeks and were good then, but perhaps don't have the practice, the acumen?
I mean, I'm not sure if this game is any different for that sort of mindset, where historically a lot of teams who qualify week 1 and only play week 1 are not necessarily going to be the best robots at the championship, regardless of what year it is. A lot of those robots are not necessarily the number 1 seed robots. There's a couple, sure, yeah, but I'm not sure if it's completely just because of this game has changed a little bit since week 1, that we're going to see them be obvious because of the game, but more just because of the circumstances, I think, personally.
And I think it's important to add to this that if you only played in one event, and it happened to be a week 1 event, and you had figured out what strategy to play to win your week 1 event and get to champs, I'm not sure how to phrase this. Are you the team that would be championing a lot in Alliance, like onto Einstein anyway? And the answer is, to me at least, is probably not. But what you are probably going to be at that rate is a really, really good role player. Yeah. So if I'm one of those teams going into champs, what I really want to do is show off how good I am at this role that I play. Because that second pick is always like, who's the best at defending? Who's the most reliable at climbing? Who has, the best sandstorm? And you don't need to have all of these things, but like whatever you do, you need to be like really consistent at that one thing, because that's what is needed out of that third robot, right? To be that role player.
Do you think that we'll actually see different makeups of alliances in playoffs at championships, or is it just going to be 2 and 1 defender on every single relevant alliance?
I think to me, it's by nature of how divisions come out. Like, roll the dice and see how many actual scorers you get in a what comes out of division. Good question. Whether or not you're going to see 2+1 actually march its way through a division, which I kind of think is going to be a winning strategy of the championship, knowing that the depth of a championship field is not like what you're going to find at a district championship. But I don't know. I think you're going to see a little bit of diversity in division elims, but not necessarily what comes out personally.
Yeah. And if the other option, there's going to be a lot of ways that you can do different things with that defender, whether they're going to help you with the climb, with the sandstorm. But if somebody does manage to somehow make a 3 offense alliance that can play with 4 robots on their side of the field, sharing 2 feeder stations, and maximize those 3 robots scoring, you could finish the whole game. But currently, no one's figured out how to do that. I don't know how to do that. There's just not enough room. There's not enough time at the feeder. Like, you have to be coordinated in a way that I don't know if an alliance can actually build. We also didn't know if the 2013 alliance would ever be able to do that, and they did, right? They were able to triple cycle. They did what they were supposed to do. It was easier. They had an extra loading station in that game. But if somebody can do it, if an alliance can be built to do it well, and you have people who can play from like both feeder stations and do all these different things that not a lot of people are having to do yet, they might be able to do something really interesting. I doubt it, but it's possible.
Yeah. In 2013, they also had the full field.
Right.
Yeah. So. And it wasn't nearly as clogged with
exactly.
rockets and a cargo ship for sure.
Right. Because I'm not even sure the Lobots are going to be able to play well, just because of you end up sometimes with 3 robots on one side of the field.
Yeah.
Like we dealt with that at our Greenville alliance, and it's really hard when you can't just say you're 1 and 2, split it left right, don't move, stay over there even if you have a defender, and just play.
I hope somebody figures it out. I haven't yet thought of a way to make it effective to have 3 robots on that side of the field. And I think if you go back historically, all the years, where we have cycling games by champs, that is a viable strategy. 2013 is a really good example of that. And I think the differences this year are subtle, but really important. That sightlines. That third team is going to be on the right side. Or I guess at champs,
you get to move it, yeah.
So that's actually, at least at the regional, and I guess the district championship level, that third team is always on the right. And like 99% of the time, that is the one who's being assigned to play defense. So basically, you can't see your robot unless you have some kind of like visual indicator on like the entire far left side. Right. And like probably not on the far or on the near, I guess, left side of the field as well. Right. So like already you're kind of like stuck scoring on one side, and the first pick who's on the left side is kind of stuck scoring on one side as well. So that's a big difference. In 2013, you can see everything. The spacing is a big deal. So, you have all these robots jammed up against each other. And like, I just don't know how you fit 4 robots back there, right? Like,
maybe they're all 971 sized, and you're just like,
yeah, maybe, or they're all swerve drives or something.
Yeah,
right? Like, where they all can reach out. We'll get there next week.
If that's the case, then I think we're all hoping that we'll start seeing some better defense. For the most part, the events that I've been watching have been, they have a defender. Technically, there is a defender over there. The things that they're doing might not be effective, but that is the thing that they're doing. If nothing else, they're not directly in the way. Okay, so Adrian made reference to it before, but let's dig in a little deeper about this year in particular. The best robot is seeding first, and that works the best. It does. But what are some of the years that we remember where that wasn't the case? And also for this year, how much does it mess up a division or a district championship division or full district championship if like the number 1 robot isn't the first seed?
I guess we can skip 2010 on that one. But years where it didn't work, whole stop years that didn't work, like for the most part, it's usually like a division we look back to, or maybe two divisions we look back to when we have that kind of conversation. Curie 2013 question mark, was that the division I'm thinking of that was all upside down?
Well,
that
Citrus
burned
seeded.
to the ground?
Yeah.
But
I mean, they
were good though.
They did exactly what they're supposed to do. Yeah, they still made it to Einstein and made a run of it. Yeah, I mean that's the problem.
2012 was a big one for me. 2012 rankings were pretty messed up. Most of the time.
2012.
Anytime we have one that can be manipulated by other teams, right? 2012 they could screw with the co-op bridge and people could do some weird things.
Like Toronto in 2012 was upside down.
Yeah. So. But even this year, when you talk about the best robot getting one, we did see, I believe, our first 8 seed win this weekend in Michigan at Lincoln. I believe it was the first 8 to win this year. So it is possible, right? And they did have a little bit of triple offense. They would have some teams they would all 3 play offense for a little while, and then they'd send a defender, which was interesting to see.
I think. Go ahead, Nick.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, I think that, the Serpentine definitely has its place in this game, because if you are at an event that is pretty decent in the middle of the pack, you can get an 8-seed alliance, kind of like what Alan was just talking about, that can, all 3 robots can play offense. Whether they choose to do it the whole match or not is a totally different thing. But if the number 1 seed is left with somebody that, maybe can only drive and maybe score 1 game object, or if they just send him as a pure defender, I think this game was kind of catered towards that. We call them the blue collar like number 8 alliance, where you just get 3 robots that are pretty consistent. None of them have like huge offensive powerhouse, but all 3 of them together can produce a pretty big score.
Assuming that you can have like a purely additive effect of all 3 of those teams,
right.
Which I think if you can play some sneaky offense, defense switch offs, there's some ways to do this. But yeah, this reminds me a lot of like 2016, for example, where there was a few great robots, and then there was a huge amount of good robots. And I don't remember what division we were in 2016, but we were the first overall pick. And we had to like eventually go up against this like super 8 alliance, right? And we lost, right? Because they had 3 great teams who could cycle, and our defender wasn't able to stop all of them at once, right? So, it kind of reminds me of one of those years. So I could totally see an 8 seed at champs getting all the way through.
It's that loading station though is still figuring out how to get 3 robots at 2 loading stations and not waste time is going to be the key.
But like in a division that isn't, the Star Trek division, like talk about like Turing last year, right? Where it was
a what division?
The Turing division?
Oh, sorry.
It was a bunch of decent robots. I think it's totally reasonable to say that take that kind of a division where it's no huge superstars and some decent robots, where you only need 2 of those loading stations, because one of those robots is going to actually have to take care of going after the cargo ship for at least half the match.
Right.
And that one robot doesn't need the 2 loading stations. I think that can work as an 8 alliance in that kind of division. But that once that robot runs out of places to score, they have a choice, right? They either have to play gatekeeper or they have to go over this side of the field and wreck stuff, right?
All right, yeah, this is a year where a big difference between this one and 2016 is 2016 had the infinite scoring opportunities theoretically, but like you had to keep doing this. So can somebody do like full galaxy brain, and they know that they're good enough to do like a rocket and more by themselves, and they know that on their second pick they're going to get somebody who can do the cargo ship. Like there are enough teams there that they'll be available. What if your number 1 pick was you pick this normally very good scoring team, but you're like, no, they're going to defend. I'm going to put like the best driving robot on this entire division on defense, and it's going to be my number 1 pick.
I mean, that's totally reasonable. I mean, I remember pretty distinctly Waterloo 2016 when 148 went and played defense on 3 robots at once. It was some of the best defense I'd ever seen in first, because they were so well driven that that's totally reasonable to do, is take one of the best well-driven robots and totally go wreck stuff with them. I can totally see that happening and being successful.
Yeah. I mean, we haven't really seen anybody be able to really defend both the 1 and 2 of the other side at the same time and keep both of them down enough to where it matters. There's a giant cargo ship in the way, which is normally why it's hard.
But if you're the number 1 seed, you have to have some major, some guts.
Let's go. Guts.
Like if you're taking out what could potentially be another, you've got 1A and 1B of rocket scorers, right? Or all goal scorers. And you take their defender takes out one of them. Like you've still got 1B, right? Versus if you have 1A and then your second best scoring robot is actually going to play defense, and you've got a team that can kind of do the cargo ship, right? Like you better do the math on that to see that. Do you think that the amount of things you can stop them from doing is like greater than the amount that team would add, right? Because they're going to come try to lock you down immediately.
Right.
So, I would not do that.
But, I wouldn't either. I'm just saying that how it work.
Before. Yeah. Maybe if you're like a 3 seed, and you're playing in the 1678, 1323 division, right? You gotta try something.
Right.
Okay, so nobody likes my suggestion. I get it. It's fine. Just
I
thought,
like
maybe this year could be like an interesting year, but no. It's going to be the same as every other year. The best team picks the second best team, and then they go to Einstein, right? That works every single time, even Newton 2016, which is
most of the divisions. Yeah, most of the divisions that'll probably be true. Will somebody probably do something different? Absolutely. We get 12 chances to see something different.
I'm certainly excited to see. We've seen at least a couple of alliance pairings so far that have the double climb just by Tetris. Maybe then there are only so many robots out there that have the double climb by pure mechanical system, whether it's an assisted lift or the hanging myself out with the suction cup. How do you think that that's going to be a huge difference maker on those divisions, or are those teams usually good enough that basically doesn't make that big a difference? The margin of victory in playoffs is still about the same as it was, still hovering around high teens. So that's more than an entire third level climb. Is this just something that we're doing for fun?
I don't think so. I think a championship, it's going to make a huge difference, especially because I think that a lot of times in a division, you either have one alliance that's like clearly taking it all the way, or you have like 5 alliances that it could be. And just depending on the depth of the division. And if you're in one of those divisions where like, that's the only differentiator between your alliance and everybody else, it's going to be huge. But and at championship as well, in the finals, we usually see things that are a little closer. And just watching 1323 and 1678 like almost max out the game in week 4. If you get 2 alliances that can do that anywhere, whether it's within a division or on Einstein, that's going to be a huge deal. And I think that from the points that it was assigned, I think they meant for it to be a huge deal. So I'm interested to see how it plays out, actually.
Yeah, I mean,
sorry, just going to cut in just quickly. We're near the 3/4 way of the show. So if you have questions, make sure to put them in the chat, and we will pick the best ones and display them up on the screen and go around with them. That's !Q, then your question. We really want to see some of the good ones. Alan, keep going.
Yeah, so I mean, just as we start to see more people get closer and closer to finishing the game and being able to have 2 people who can do their whole side of the field, their rockets, whatever, or get very close, you have to be stealing points wherever you can, right? So if you're not in playoffs starting 2 robots off level 2, and if you're not trying to figure out how to get as many of the points back as you can at the end, you're going to be just down going in immediately, right? So I have a lot of friends. I know a lot of them are working on vacuum climbs or different things, right? They're coming. So even if there's teams that don't have them right now, there are teams that will be getting them hopefully for district championships and for world championships.
Well, all right, we might see some new systems, but we'll at least see more teams trying some sort of Tetris double climb on their division, on their practice fields, because they're real practice fields, which this year, oh boy, the Hab 3 practice field. I understand whatever, all of the, it's hard to practice for real when the whole front of it just goes bloop.
Yep.
Yeah, I've participated in and seen some very precarious level 3 practices on the practice fields that we have in Texas this year. So yeah, it's very hard. I'm hoping that once we get further on and people actually have a chance to kind of do this for real, we might see some cool stuff. I hope that we do.
I have a lot of friends too, Alan.
Yeah. I mean, I assume we all do. That's why we're here.
Yeah.
All my friends are in this room right now. All right. So in lieu of, I just completely lost my train of thought. All right. So we seem to think that we've got a pretty good handle on this game. Does anybody else in the chat think that we have, like, this game is locked down? It's going to look like this for the rest of the events. Let's see if we have. I am stalling. Okay. Here's our first question. Sorry about actually saying that we're stalling. Okay. First question that we have coming up. How much of 1323's success is owed to their swerve, and how much of their success is owed to their manipulator mechanisms, their mechanisms?
A little bit of both. The swerve is crazy. Wait, do you want someone else?
I said how much. I said how much. Like, the question is how much.
Oh, okay. 79.863% due to swerve. Whatever 100 minus that is for the rest. And no, they so if you built a swerve drive and you put an elevator on it and you wanted a ball pickup, like, chances are you would just, like, put it on the elevator, right? But they actually have the ball pass through, which when you have this, 3 degrees of freedom swerve drive that can spin around, like, maybe you would think you wouldn't need it. But they actually put the ball intake on the back. So there's times when you're watching 1323, they score a ball and they're back picking up another ball off the back of the robot, waiting for the elevator to come down to pick it up. Like, They are bottlenecked by the speed of their elevator, which is like, no one is ever bottlenecked by the speed of their elevator, right? Like, that's always the thing that you care about, where, like, in practice, like, who cares, right? So yeah, it makes a big deal that they have that ball intake on the back. The disc pickup, whatever, like, it's a little wheelie thing. A lot of people have the wheelie thing. That's where the swerve drive really matters a lot. But yeah, the ball intake on the back, that was pretty smart.
Yeah, that's definitely the one feature that was one of the last things we cut off of our feature list of whether we would put it on the back or not, and it just made things more complicated. But it's one of the ones I wish we had back.
We are definitely seeing a lot of really quick cycles into the rocket where you're not even turning around. Like, the ball is right there. And even if you do have to turn around, one of the things that everybody said during build season, during the early strategy weeks, was like, man, 12 cycles is so many. And now, I don't know. It seems like we're not driving that much.
Yeah, it's not that crazy. We have teams doing 14, 15 cycles.
Yeah.
And thanks to Ben Ludit for that question. One of his good questions. That's his entire quota. All right. We got one coming in from Akash. Do you think champs will have more legitimate buddy climbs? How many more?
Like, what does he mean by legitimate? Like, when you're lifting somebody else?
This is exactly the question as it was presented to me.
I don't think there's going to be that many people. Yeah, I'm not sure there's going to be that many people picking people up. Like, I don't think anybody's adding that feature very much in the Barker style of having a platform, like kind of 2018 style. But like I said, we will see a lot more teams going for taking up less space on the hab.
Yeah.
So here's a question. If you had 15 pounds and you had whatever, you had already qualified and you're done with regionals this week and you're playing at Houston Champs, you've got some mechanical design resources available. Do you try to build the 1678 line? Like, and I think the answer is like probably not, right? Because like, even though 1678 is awesome, it still takes a lot to pull off really successfully, right? So transpose that onto the entire population, right? And like, is now someone going to add a like fairly complex pickup mechanism? And maybe like you can't say no definitively to anything, but strategically, I don't think that it makes sense. It probably makes more sense to figure out how to get your robot to take up less space on the hat. Right.
Yeah. The Upper Creek Strike Force vacuum climbs are going to be a lot more common than Citrus double climb things.
Yeah, I agree. And even if somebody's planning to build one of these Citrus ones, I'm going to stop short of saying I feel bad for you, because it is really, really hard to get one of those right, and B, it's really hard for the average, pure mathematical average robot at the championship to drive on your forks.
Well, it's also really hard to put it on after you haven't designed your whole robot around it.
It's also really hard to convince any team to try to get on top of it too.
Yep. All right. Two quick updates from Akash_Stogie. He's clarifying he means lifting somebody else and have it actually work. And 2, he's goading Alan into building a buddy climb.
No, we have the vacuum pump stuff already going. Don't worry. We're not doing buddy climb.
All right, we lost Tom there for a second. Let's go to the next question. We have from Copiola Pedi. We have, when do you think the null panels will not be used in playoffs? So we asked this question kind of earlier in GameSense, but now we're talking about maxing out scoring. So how many more opportunities for cargo in the cargo ship will we see?
I think we're going to start seeing it at district champs all over the place. But I don't think you're going to see it much in the quals. I mean, it's really probably going to be more elims, but I think as soon as when is the first district champ? Week 6?
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. And you'll start seeing, especially teams will figure out which ones they can cap in Sandstorm. And if the calculus gets really interesting when you start seeing the low bots, the Jack in the Bots, and those teams that can't play the Rocket, how many are they willing to pull and bet that they can hatch during the match? Because the teams that can play the Rocket, most of them aren't finishing
if I'm 29-10 or 13-23, I'm starting with one by champs, right?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, and this year's, this Sandstorm is a lot different from Auto last year, because Auto last year, all the game objects were like relatively close to you. This year, they're not, right? So there is like a cap that most teams are going to be at. That's not very far away, I think, from where we are right now. 2 hatch panels on your way to a third. And maybe some people are going to be able to get to the third depending on how fast they are, or pass throughs and not having to turn or things like that. But I think it's gonna be really hard. Well, yeah, I really don't think that you can. It's really
you can't get the third, like you can't load a third hatch panel, right? You can get a ball.
Yeah, sure.
Right.
But sure. I was just saying third game object in general.
Yeah, okay.
But we're also, we're seeing alliances that perhaps that they can have cargo spill out so that they can start doing stuff on the Rocket. There is some place for that sort of chicanery.
Right. You had 2056 go out and try to catch the cargo straight out of the ship. So there's some more interesting things teams are starting to do.
Yeah. If you can start with little to no null hatch panels, and both teams go in, tag 2 hatches on the cargo ship in Auto, right? Like that is immediately, 10 points each?
Yeah.
So 40. So that's like a lot. Or no. 20. Math. It's hard.
Yeah. 25 if you get your third to doing
the front. The third to do the front.
Yeah.
Right. So the question becomes like, what's the opportunity cost of that? And right now in quals, a lot of teams are running put the hatch panels on the rocket, right? So if you go and do the cargo ship, right? Yeah, you get a bunch of points right off the bat, and you get a huge jump there. But now you have to place those back rocket hatches under defense.
Yep.
And like, is the amount of time it's going to take to do that not worth those free points? And I think that's like, it's going to depend on the team, right? And you're going to have to know like, this is how well we play through defense, and this is how well the other team plays through defense, and that kind of stuff. But it's not just like free points, right? Like there's an opportunity cost to it.
Absolutely.
And if anything, teams have not been practicing putting hatch panels on the cargo ship. Like it should be similar, but they've got the big bolts in the way, and just any sort of difference there. You're used to doing all your maneuvering around there with your cargo. And I mean, teams are definitely going to get surprised, but somebody's going to have to push the limit. Like if you know that you can't beat this team, this other alliance in all the regular ways, you're going to have to do something. You don't just go out there and score the same number of points every match.
Right.
Yeah. So Alan brought something up pre-show about how you guys got smacked by defense.
Oh, we're going to talk about that now. All right.
Well, maybe you can elaborate on that.
Oh, no, we can. So the defense just becomes interesting, right? So if it brings up the good point of if you bring the null panels off, even if you are finishing them, right? So if you take the null panels off and you do what you're talking about, that 25-point auto, now you only have 3 bays left to score on your cargo ship. If a defender can take one of your rockets away, right? If they just sit at the back hatch of one of those rockets and you can't peel them off, you're pretty limited on what you can score. If you can only do the front hatches and like maybe you can get in and kind of scoot a ball to the left or something and get it to go into the front, you're kind of left with just a rocket. If you don't do that and you can get your hatches quickly on your rocket, you might have more of an opportunity to keep both those rockets alive and have defenders have more places they have to defend now, so that you haven't just completed a whole scoring objective.
Yeah, one of the things I found was important when we played at San Francisco was to, at least on one side of the field, always have cargo scoring opportunities on both sides. So you want to like finish a layer of a rocket, whether it be top, middle, bottom, whatever, and have a thing open in the cargo ship, because then you can kind of do the juke.
Correct.
Right? It's like, am I going this way? I don't know. Am I going that way? I don't know. Right? Like you always have something open, right? But if you close off that cargo ship right there in auto, then you have to like fight to get that layer. So now it's like very clear what you are doing, right? Like, which makes it easier to like coordinate the defense. So I'm sure that like we'll all talk about this, and 1323 will just like do whatever, go mess around over here, kids, whatever you want, and it'll work out fine for them. But yeah, these are the things that keep me up at night.
Yep.
All right. Well, as per usual at GameSense, we have clearly thought through this way more than any actual teams on the field, figuring out their real strategy. So let's move on to the next question. It's another one from Akash. He asks, which turret is best, 254, 195, or 3476? And in addition, from our own Stephanie Morrison, what about 1425 and 4488's turrets? Come on. A little P&W.
Which bear is best?
False. No. But do you see significant differences between these turreted teams, or?
I can tell you. Well, you guys go first, and I'll tell you my thoughts.
So of the three the three big ones that I know about at least are the Cheesy Poofs, Code Orange, and Cyber Knights. Cheesy Poofs and Code Orange are both turreting the entire elevator, right? Cyber Knights have the really cool system where they're just turreting the carriage. The elevator stays stationary. That definitely was really cool to see. I was not expecting that one. So for me, that one wins. But then you get everything that Poofs are able to do with that arm when they eventually get it working and get everything what I assume they're going to be able to do with it. Like I've already seen some of it where they're able to place over defenders and stuff. It's going to be very interesting.
How have you seen that?
Well, I mean, in matches where like
I haven't seen that.
Where like a defender's doing something and you spin around and you go to the cargo ship instead of the rocket and stuff. Like that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah, 195s is really cool. The thing I like about 195s, and we had a very similar design drawn up on a whiteboard earlier in the year when we were trying to decide our architecture. And for a variety of reasons, we went with the thing that we went with. But 195s is really cool because they have the disc intake and the ball intake on separate sides. So it makes it a lot easier to kind of like deal with what's going to happen where. Like the balls always get picked up on one side and the discs always get picked up on the other side. And that doesn't seem important. But I can tell you that like this 6-wheel drive base with a turret on top that can point any way and do anything from any side is just like incredibly confusing for the drivers. I think we have some really great drivers on our team. We've been changing the software up on them, and they've been champs about it. They've been kind of adapting to it, but it's still like really hard to reason about. Like we've had to do a bunch of wacky stuff. Like we now have a field relative turret. So you press forward on the D-pad and the turret points forward or left or right or 45 degrees or whatever, and the driver drives and the turret just tracks. So it's kind of the opposite of what, some of the swerve drives and stuff are doing. And like, we've just had to iterate on all these wacky control schemes to kind of like take the mental, burden of thinking about this stuff moving around and dumb it down and dumb it down and dumb it down. So like, who's going to be the best turret? Like, it's going to be the one who has this figured out how to do all that stupid stuff, when you could have just built a swerve drive. And that's anyway, not salty at all. But, yeah. So.
I personally don't. It's kind of the scouter in me, but at a certain point, like I love going down into the pits and actually seeing the differences between robots. But once you're on the field, I do not care how you do it. I'm just counting. Now, there's some subjective stuff. There's some how do we think it'll fare against better defense, and that starts to matter at higher levels. But like,
I saw a video. Go ahead, Steve. Sorry.
No, I was just just quickly, like, you put up the things. I don't care if you have 6 wheels, 8 wheels, 12 wheels. I care at that level. But like, I don't.
What about 1 wheel?
Can you?
Univille.
Put the thing on the thing, man.
It's not 2005 anymore. We don't have like ball drives in the room. Come on.
I saw this video of 195 that was taken from the side of the field at whatever event that they played at last week, and I think it was one of the eliminations matches, and they were just getting manhandled by defense, and they were trying to score balls in the cargo ship, and like the defender would come in and kind of like jackknife them this way, and they were able to just be like, I don't care, and put their turret over. Yeah, it took them an extra second, but like while jackknifed against the cargo ship, they were still able to score balls. So like as a team that built a turret, right? Like I understand why you want to do these things. And I think it's going to be really, really good for a team like 195 to have that when you get to that higher levels of play where it's like, oh my God, we're just going to be getting beat up by defense every single match. Right. So we'll see where the turret bots end up.
Yeah. Tom's just hoping. He's just like fantasy over here. All right. Let's go on to our next question. From Boltman 2019, how much of an effect is Sandstorm versus just standing behind the line and automate it?
I think it's great.
I love Sandstorm so far. A lot of the teams who've never had good autos are scoring points in the first 15 seconds of the match. That's a good thing.
Yep.
I definitely thought it was going to be like more of a disaster than it actually is. I kind of thought you were just going to have teams like trying to drive around and just like knock it into everybody else, and it was just going to be like total mayhem. But I think I've been pleasantly surprised with how it works out. And I mean, the teams that have the abilities to have a good, like purely autonomous mode during that time are all doing that, and it hasn't really changed anything for them, but it gives some other teams some opportunities to contribute during the first 15 seconds. So I don't think it's been a bad thing so far.
Do you think that we'll see something similar to this in the future? I don't think that we can go back to auto modes because seeing every team be able to contribute something in the sandstorm period and drive around and at least get off the hab, maybe move around, score some points, potentially like even score a ball or a hatch or something. Like it's been really awesome. Like to go talk to teams when we're doing strategy before matches and be like, hey, what do you do in sandstorm? We're like, oh, we drive off, we score a hatch on the front. It's like, great, do that. When in like years past, it's like, what do you do in auto? Well, what we do is we do nothing. So it's like,
can you help us drive forward? Yeah.
So it's been, I think that's been really awesome, and I think it furthers our cause here of trying to inspire kids to get excited about these sorts of things. And so I hope it doesn't go away, or I hope we come up with something where more teams can do stuff all the time, whether or not it be this format or another. I really like it.
Yeah, and it plays well on the stream. Like watching the matches, I don't have a problem. It is annoying behind the glass, especially when there's like field delays and you have no clue what's going on because the drape's already down and you're just sitting there being like, "Could someone explain why we're here for 5 minutes?" But otherwise, it's been fine.
Well, all right. So since we're at least a little bit on the subject of how well teams have been doing, let's throw it over to the Texas folks. How much has the changeover to districts affected Texas?
Good question. Alan probably has a better answer than I do, though.
Way to pass the buck.
No, just because he does a lot more with like teams in the area, and we're kind of like out by ourselves. But I mean, for me, at least for now, every team is competing twice. That is a huge thing for Texas. Huge. And so even just at Greenville last weekend, most of the teams there were on there. I think it was like all but 7 of the 42.
11.
Okay, 11. Oh yeah, you were an inspector. You probably know that. So just from an event standpoint, like most of the teams were driving. That is a huge improvement for Texas.
And most of them were scoring pretty well. So we were going in, and there were very few times where we would send somebody to defense unless they like asked to play defense. Most of the time it was like, yeah, you guys can have the side of the field and one of you can score hatches and balls. That's awesome. And they were doing 1 or 2 or 3, whatever, when before in many years, they were hopefully driving because this was the first time they'd ever touched the joysticks before, but now it's their second play. So it's a huge advantage. We'll really see how districts are and how everybody still likes each other after week 6 when we have our first ever state championship and all of Texas gets to play against each other for the first time. Really, like we kind of had off seasons that kind of did it, but never really everybody was ever in the same room at the same time.
Excuse me, Texas and New Mexico.
That's right. There are New Mexico teams qualified.
There are New Mexico teams. There are a couple. Yeah, Project Y, who we played against in El Paso finals, is very solid. They are very good. Like, they will. I would be very surprised if they're not in Texas State Champs playoffs. But
okay. Yeah, I mean, I think in general, though, like Greenville this weekend was probably the most competitive district event that we'll be at this year. We're competing in Dallas this weekend, which isn't on paper, at least doesn't look quite as competitive. So I don't know. I guess I may have a different opinion after this week, but Greenville was really competitive last weekend, and it was fun to watch, even if we didn't compete. So.
Yeah, and it's really cool to see a bunch of the teams who have never really been able to get some of the awards, get a lot more awards, right? We went from 6 regionals to 10 districts, so we have a bunch. We already have 4 new chairman's teams, I think, out of the 8 that we've awarded so far. There's a bunch of new EI. There's a lot of teams getting that have been doing things in their communities for a long time and have never been able to just bubble up to the top, and they have this year.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let's spread the love a little bit. And go right back to another question from a same person that we've already answered. But we are at least no longer relegated to the country that is Texas. Okay, will we see a 154-154 tie ever? And this is from Boltman 2019.
No, not even IRI. No.
Sorry, Boltman.
There's only 2 loading stations.
Well, I mean, I guess I assume that you all think that your own team isn't good enough to do it. So everybody out there in GameSense land, feel free, as always, to prove us wrong, especially in this, because Oh my God, that would be hilarious, right? It would be nuts. How could you even handle it?
It would be nuts. What a nice answer to a question from Boltman. Never mind. There's some fastener joke inside here somewhere. Yeah, what happened to Rivet Man? Let's get him back.
Well, this show has devolved to the point where we are now making fun of people's screen names. So
Rivet Man graduated. That's what happened.
Yeah, say Rivet Man.
Graduated to Clicos? I don't know. Now I'm part of the problem. This is what you've done to me, Tom. This is your fault.
Science done?
I'm just saying, like in a question from Boltman, someone said the word nut.
Well, that all went downhill.
That's GameSense. All right, so I'd like to thank absolutely everybody for being on the show. Our rotating panel and our guest. Thanks to each and every one of you. But most importantly, I'd like to thank all of the people in chat, all of our viewers, because without you, we might talk to each other in like a dark room and only talk about strategy, but it would not be nearly as fun without your constant input. Big plug for Play-by-Play, First TV's show that's going to be on First Inspires every Saturday, 12 to 8 Eastern. This week, I am on the desk with Mason and a couple other people behind the scenes, but we're ramping up all the way to this is the last week before district championships. It'll still be Saturdays on week 6 and week 7, but at the championships, we'll have play-by-play every day of competition. And the last couple of weeks will be slightly more focused. There won't be quite as many events. We still have 30-something events this week, but we'll be showing you all of them, whip around coverage, event to event, the best finals, the best matches, the most exciting moments. But at championships, we'll just be dealing with those specific divisions. So please keep tuning into Play-by-Play. We hope to see you there.
Yeah,
Any last thoughts?
If you ever want to see someone run on pure caffeine, like what would a human be like if the only fuel in their body was caffeine? Tune into Play-by-Play at the Houston Championships where you can see Nick Lawrence. After 3 days, I'm talking about robots.
Oh man,
it's gonna be awesome.
That's the perfect description of exactly how that goes.
I love watching Nick and Nick on the stream.
We're going to go out of our way. We're going to go out of our way at championship weekends to make sure that one person stays on the desk the whole time. We'll rotate the other one, but you'll see like, oh, fresh new faces. But then there's just Nick getting more jittery and more jittery. That's going to be the highlight of championships, especially for me.
Little known fact: Nick and Mason actually sit at that desk all night as well. So even when we go off the air, they're still sitting there going over matches, thinking about the next day, getting ready to bring the action to you, the viewer at home. So, really, those guys are putting their lives on the line for you.
At this rate, we're going to watch the line selections, and it's just going to be tuning in live to see who vomits first.
Well, everybody who's had to deal with their team's finances knows it's, we've already got the convention space, already paid for that, but hotels, very expensive. All right. Jokes aside, thanks everybody.